Hey friends, it's Alex here, and before we begin, I wanted to let you know that I'll be giving out premium holographic stickers to each and every single listener that rates the podcast 5 stars wherever they're listening from now until the end of February. That's right. All you have to do is send me a screenshot of your rating along with the best mailing address to my email at darklyspeakingpodcast@gmail.com, or feel free to DM me on TikTok and Instagram at darklyspeakingpodcast. Thank you all so much for being here, and back to the show. If you found your way to this podcast, I think it's safe to assume you're probably a little like me. You might enjoy a spooky episode here and there, but you're also drawn to true crime, not just for the stories themselves, but for what they reveal, the awareness they create, the conversations they start, and the impact they can have both for the people telling them and for the people listening. When we take in these stories from the safety of our own homes, it can be easy to forget that they aren't abstract. They are real people, real families, lives that were permanently altered. With that comes a responsibility to pay attention, to handle information carefully, and to push for change where it's needed. That responsibility is something I take seriously, and it's actually one of the main reasons I even started this podcast. It's part of my ethos. I want to use my voice, however small, to make a difference. Maybe that difference feels small today, maybe tomorrow it doesn't. Either way, I'm not going to stop caring and bearing that responsibility to the best of my ability. No matter where you're listening from, that responsibility belongs to you too. To listen, to stay engaged, to speak up when it matters. If you've ever felt like your attention, your knowledge, or your voice doesn't make a difference, well, it does. There is always something you can do. You can share accurate information responsibly. You can help keep a case visible. You can support nonprofit organizations like the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. There's so much one person can do to make a difference, to change the system. And if you don't know where to start, then start here. Most people don't realize this, but less than 1% of child abductions are committed by strangers. The vast majority involve family members or people the child already knows. But when a stranger is involved, the timeline changes fast. Statistically, in cases where a child abduction ends in murder, 74% of victims are killed within the first 3 hours, with 90% killed in the first 24 hours. Which means that in those rare stranger abductions, time isn't just important, it's everything. According to the 2024 National Crime Information Center's missing person and unidentified person statistics, more than 349,000 reports of missing persons involving youth were entered into the system that year alone. In total, over 533,000 missing person reports were submitted. By the end of 2024, 93,447 cases were still active, and 27% of those involved children and teenagers who hadn't been found. That same year, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children assisted law enforcement, families, and child welfare professionals with 29,568 reports of missing children. Of those cases, 27,033 were resolved, while 2,535 remained open. And while Amber Alerts don't apply to most cases, when they do, they matter. In 2024, at least 68 children were rescued because an Amber Alert was activated. At the end of that year, at least 1,268 children had been recovered due to the Amber Alert system. But there's more to it than just an alert. Amber Alerts are something most of us recognize instantly now. You've probably experienced it yourself. You're in public, a grocery store, a restaurant, a crowded street, when your phone vibrates. At first, it's easy to assume it's a text or an email, then another phone buzzes, and another, until the sound cuts through everything and becomes impossible to ignore. It's meant to pull you out of whatever you're doing, to make sure everyone around you is paying attention, because somewhere nearby, a child has gone missing. But before it was a system we all recognize, before it was that sound on your phone, there was a little girl named Amber Hagerman. Welcome back to an all-new episode of Darkly Speaking. My name is Alex Kern, and tonight, I want to tell you the story of Amber Hagerman. Behind the Amber Alert we all recognize today is a 9-year-old little girl who was gentle, caring, and full of life. Just a few weeks ago, on January 13th, 2026, we passed the 30th anniversary of Amber's abduction and murder, a case that remains unsolved today. This is a story that has to be told again and again because a child was taken, her killer was never held accountable, and justice was never served. In the meantime, Amber is still helping. Her name became a system built around urgency, the belief that when a child is taken, the public should know immediately and know what to look for while there's still time to act. So, this is the story of Amber Hagerman and how her family and her community fought to change the nation. It's Saturday, January 13th, 1996 in Arlington, Texas. Donna Williams, who now goes by Donna Norris, is spending the afternoon with her two children, Amber, who is 9 years old, and Ricky, who is 5. Saturdays are usually family days for them, so they eat burgers together, then head to a nearby park, spending some time outside before eventually making their way back to Donna's parents' house for the rest of the afternoon. Later, at around 3 p.m., Donna drives Amber and Ricky to her parents' house. As soon as she pulls in, before she's even fully parked, the kids ask if they can ride their bikes around the neighborhood. Donna agrees, but she sets a clear boundary, only around the block and no farther. The kids say they understand, grab their bikes, and ride off toward Claudia Street at around 3:10 p.m. Amber and Ricky rode their bikes in the neighborhood pretty often and knew the area well, having memorized the streets from countless afternoons spent riding there. Normally, they would stay close, circling the block and coming back round to Highland Drive, but that day they went farther, and instead of looping back around toward their grandparents' house, they took a left. Just 1 block beyond where Donna allowed sat an abandoned Winn-Dixie, a store that had been closed for years, leaving behind a wide, mostly empty parking lot where neighborhood kids often rode their bikes, skateboards, and scooters. At the back of the store was a loading ramp, once used by delivery drivers, which kids in the neighborhood had since turned into a bike ramp. Amber and Ricky knew they weren't supposed to be in the parking lot without an adult, but it didn't feel like a big deal at the time. You see, they'd been there many times before. The area felt familiar, and they rode around the lot for a few minutes, going back and forth the way they had on other afternoons, planning to turn back around any moment. After a few minutes, something comes over Ricky, and he starts thinking about the rule his mom set. He realizes they've gone farther than they were supposed to, and he doesn't want to get in trouble, so he tells Amber he's heading back to the house. Amber tells him she'll be right behind him. She wants to keep riding a little longer, and Ricky leaves the parking lot on his own. Within minutes, Ricky is back at his grandparents' house. He looks back expecting Amber to be right behind him, but she isn't there. His grandfather, Jimmy, is working outside in the garage, and when he asks where Amber is, Ricky explains that they went to the Winn-Dixie, that Amber stayed behind, and that she said she would be right behind him. Jimmy doesn't hesitate. He takes Ricky, puts him in his truck, and drives toward the Winn-Dixie himself. When Jimmy and Ricky arrive, he immediately sees Amber's pink and white bicycle lying in the parking lot. Amber isn't with it. He also notices a police officer already nearby, speaking with a resident whose backyard borders the lot, separated only by a chain link fence. At that point, it becomes clear that something is already wrong. A 78-year-old resident named Jimmy Kevill, who lived on Ruth Street, called 911 at 3:18 p.m. He said he had been in his backyard watching Amber ride her bike back and forth in the lot when all of a sudden a black pickup truck pulled up beside her. A man jumped out, grabbed Amber off her bike, and forced her into the vehicle through the driver's side door. Amber fought, kicking and screaming as she tried to resist, which immediately signaled to Kevill that something was very wrong. He described the suspect as a non-African American male, under 6 feet tall with a medium build and enough strength to lift Amber off of her bike without her feet ever touching the ground before putting her in the truck. The entire abduction took only seconds before the vehicle drove away with Amber inside. Jimmy drives straight back to the house and tells Donna that her baby girl is gone. At first, she doesn't believe it. It doesn't make sense. Amber had only been alone for 8 minutes. Donna leaves the house and runs back toward the Winn-Dixie, crying out her daughter's name as she goes, but there's no response. When she returns to her parents' house, she immediately calls her ex-husband and Amber's father, Richard, telling him he needs to come there right away. Amber has been kidnapped. Law enforcement response begins almost immediately. Arlington police quickly verify Kevil's statement and issue a bolo for a black pickup truck with the suspect described as a white or Hispanic male in his late 20s to early 30s, under 6 feet tall, with a medium build and dark hair. According to Kevil, the kidnapper grabbed Amber, put her in his truck, drove to the north side of the Winn-Dixie parking lot, and headed west, further into town rather than east toward the highway. Traveling west on Abram Street meant he could have quickly pulled into either a residential neighborhood to the south or an industrial area to the north. Across Arlington, officers begin stopping and checking black pickup trucks as quickly as possible. Within the first hour, missing person posters are printed and distributed, and what begins as a localized response expands into a citywide search. Investigators are also forced to confront a frustrating reality. The Winn-Dixie parking lot wasn't isolated, and regular traffic moved through the area. Homes sat nearby, along with popular stores and a laundromat next door. Amber was taken on the west side of the laundromat, an area without windows, which meant no one inside could see what was happening. Police canvassed the neighborhood door to door, hoping someone in or near the laundromat might have noticed something or seen the truck, but by the time the officers arrive, the patrons are gone, leaving no way to track or identify who had been there. As police work through leads, the search quickly grows beyond law enforcement. Community members join in almost immediately. A Fort Worth Star-Telegram article later documents one man who hears Donna screaming Amber's name, learns what happened from police, and starts searching for the truck himself. Neighbors comb streets, creeks, and bushes. After sunset, many return home briefly, grab flashlights, and come back out, continuing the search throughout the night. That same day, Pam Curry, a documentarian and news producer, is with Donna and remains at her side after Amber is taken. Curry had met Amber, Donna, and Ricky months earlier while producing a Channel 8 documentary about Donna's transition from welfare to work, first connecting with the family at a women's shelter. In the months leading up to Amber's kidnapping, Curry had grown close to the Hagermans and spent long hours filming their daily life, capturing ordinary moments like going to school, playing with friends, blowing out birthday candles. Now, she plans to use that existing footage to show Amber as a little girl with a family and a full life, not just the victim of a horrific crime, believing that seeing Amber in motion, not just as a single grainy photograph, might make a difference. And it certainly did. By the end of the first day, media attention intensifies. Journalists line the street outside Donna's parents' house, and Donna and Richard continue to speak to the press, addressing both the public and the person who took their daughter. They appear on the evening news, pleading publicly for Amber's safe return, and though they are divorced, they present a united front, speaking together whenever possible as they ask for help. As coverage grows, so too does community support. Pink ribbons begin appearing on trees, light poles, and car antennas. Meals are delivered to the family, and a local dairy and radio station jointly offer a $15,000 reward for information leading to Amber or her abductor. In the days that follow, investigators begin with the people closest to Amber, her family, and those around her, working through them one by one and ultimately ruling each of them out. As time passes, it becomes clear that this wasn't someone who knew the family. This was a stranger abduction. They begin by conducting a grid search focused on registered sex offenders in the surrounding area. On the third day, January 16th, after 2 days of nonstop searching, police begin to form a task force to manage the growing number of tips and possible leads. More than 50 law enforcement officers are assigned to the case, and the FBI joins the effort, bringing in both the child abduction unit and the serial killer unit. Every tip is followed up on, including those from psychics and mediums. But despite the volume, none lead to a breakthrough. As more time passes with no answers, hope and momentum begin to fade. Amber's family and investigators understand that time is not on their side, and the chances of finding Amber alive are growing slimmer. Even so, Donna remains strong for her daughter, holding on to the hope that she's being taken care of and will be returned to her soon. On the 4th day of the investigation, on a bitterly cold and stormy evening, the case shifts again. At around 11:30 that night, investigators are notified by dispatch that a body has been found. A man walking his dog notices something in a creek behind an apartment complex, roughly 4 miles from where Amber was taken. When he moves closer, he realizes it's a little girl's body and immediately yells for his neighbors to call police. When investigators arrive at the scene, they find a female child's body floating face down, caught in brush near the creek bed. They quickly determined that she hadn't been in the water long. Maintenance workers had been in the area earlier that day and hadn't seen anything. Heavy rain the night before caused unusually high water levels, and investigators believe Amber's body was carried there from wherever it had originally been dumped. That same rain had also washed away critical physical evidence, both from the scene and from her body. Although police are not yet able to positively identify the body, an officer is sent to the Hagerman's home to inform them that a child has been found. The family endures an excruciating night, waiting to learn whether the child recovered is Amber. Hours later, confirmation comes and the Hagermans are notified that the remains belong to Amber just minutes before the news is released to the media. At that point, the investigation shifts from a missing person case to a homicide. An autopsy later confirms that Amber died from a severe laceration across her throat and had been dead for at least 2 days. During that time, she had been held captive. There were no signs of torture, no signs of restraint, and no initial signs of sexual assault. The injuries that were visible indicate that she had not traveled far from where her body was recovered, suggesting the killer left her close to the location where she would later be found. With the crime now confirmed, investigators refocus entirely on identifying the person responsible. They immediately begin canvassing the area in and around the apartment complex. They review camera footage and go door to door, but aside from some very grainy footage that may show a dark truck entering the complex prior to the discovery of Amber's body, they come up short. They still have a suspect and vehicle description, but no name and no clear location. With the FBI already involved, analysts are brought in to help build a criminal profile. The profile suggests the suspect likely had strong ties to Arlington, either living or working in the area and feeling comfortable navigating the city. He may have had a prior criminal record, possibly involving crimes against children. Investigators also believe he likely lived alone and avoided apartments or high-traffic areas, given the need for a private place to hold a captive without being seen. The attack is believed to have been triggered by stress, potentially job loss, divorce, or another major personal disruption, and was opportunistic. In the end, everything comes back to timing. The abductor crossed paths with Amber during an 8-minute window, the brief period where she was alone in that parking lot. Days turn into weeks and weeks into months, with leads coming in and going nowhere. Donna keeps moving forward, choosing to live for Amber. She returns to medical school and graduates, and as time passes, Amber's investigation remains in the public eye. Across Arlington and the surrounding communities, her death leaves something unresolved. Not just grief, but disbelief. It was difficult to reconcile that Amber had been held captive for 2 days. For many, that detail is the hardest to sit with because it means there was a window, a stretch of hours when rescue might have been possible. From the start, a realization begins to take shape. If word of Amber's kidnapping had spread sooner, the outcome might have been different. And over time, that question, how to turn that realization into action, becomes something people like Deanna Simone, a mother from Fort Worth, feel compelled to pursue. Like much of North Texas, Deanna watches Amber's case unfold on TV and keeps returning to the same images. Video clips of a child playing with friends, blowing out birthday candles, moving through a full and happy life. Those images stay with her because they aren't still photographs. They show a child alive and present in the world, taken from a parking lot in the middle of the afternoon, with people nearby, cars passing, stores open, life continuing around her. In Amber's case, she was taken around 3:18 p.m. and the news didn't report it until around 6 p.m. That's a 2.5-hour gap between when she was taken and when the public even knew she was missing. What unsettles Deanna the most isn't the absence of witnesses, it's the likelihood that people did see something. They just didn't understand what they were seeing. In her mind, the failure wasn't blindness. It was context. People didn't know what to look for, and without that understanding, the moment slipped by. That realization turns into a question Deanna can't shake. She eventually calls into a Dallas-Fort Worth radio station and asks something simple. If broadcasters can interrupt programming for severe weather, for tornadoes, floods, emergencies, why couldn't they do the same for a kidnapped child? The idea isn't about technology, it's about timing, about cutting through routine programming with information people can act on right now, especially in the first hours after an abduction, when time matters most. That question gains traction quickly. Police and broadcasters respond positively. The community does too. Almost immediately, media outlets and law enforcement in the Dallas-Fort Worth area begin working together, testing the idea in real time. What begins as a local effort doesn't stay local for long. 9 months later, in October of 1996, Deanna, Simone, and Amber's family help bring the plan to a national stage. The Amber Plan is unveiled across the United States. The name serves two purposes. It honors Amber Hagerman, and it stands for America's Missing Broadcast Emergency Response. The alert becomes both a memorial and a mechanism, a way to turn loss into action. In its earliest form, the system is simple. Once an abduction is confirmed, police notify participating broadcasters, originally by fax, and radio stations interrupt scheduled programming to share information directly with the public. The goal is to extend law enforcement's reach by turning ordinary people into additional eyes and ears, a framework that has gone on to save thousands of children. One morning in November of 1998, 3 years after Amber's abduction and murder, Arlington resident Patricia Sokolowski drops off her 8-week-old daughter, Ray Lee, at her babysitter's house before heading to work. The babysitter, Sandra Fallis, is a friend Patricia met while she was pregnant with Ray Lee, someone she trusted deeply. Patricia leaves for work, expecting an ordinary day. As the day goes on, Patricia realizes she hasn't heard from Sandra. When she returns to the house later that evening, no one is home. Sandra and the baby are gone, and Patricia can't get in touch with her. At first, she doesn't think her daughter has been kidnapped. She calls local hospitals, wondering if there's been an accident or some kind of emergency. When there are no answers, she calls 911. Police take the report and move quickly, telling Patricia they're going to use something called an Amber Alert to help bring her daughter home. Broadcast systems are activated across Arlington, and radio stations begin describing 8-week-old Ray Lee and the suspected kidnapper, Sandra Fallis. Within 30 minutes, police receive a call. Sandra is located on Interstate 20 with the baby secured in a car seat in the front of the vehicle. Officers pull her over, and Ray Lee is safely returned to her family. Deanna Simmons receives the call and is absolutely elated, seeing it as proof that the system works. For Donna and Ricky, the moment carries a different kind of weight. They later reflect on Amber as a guardian angel, watching over other children and helping bring them home. As an adult, Ray Lee herself comes to see Amber as her own guardian angel. Over time, the system expands beyond Texas and takes hold nationwide. By April 30th, 2003, 7 years after Amber's abduction and murder, President Bush signs on and designates a National Amber Alert Coordinator within the Department of Justice. Alerts move beyond radio to television, highway signs, digital billboards, and online platforms, eventually reaching mobile phones, immediate, unavoidable, and designed to move information as fast as possible. Because the system is so targeted, many people never receive an alert at all. Amber Alerts apply to only a small percentage of cases. That's because the criteria are strict. Law enforcement must believe a child has been abducted, that the child is in imminent danger, that they are 17 or younger, and that there is enough descriptive information for the public to meaningfully help. Amber's case met every one of those criteria, which makes the question that follows unavoidable. How different might things have been if the public had known what to look for? It isn't a question of blame, just an acknowledgement of how much information can change. As the years pass, the investigation into Amber Hagerman's murder never formally closes. It remains active, revisited as new information emerges, technology advances, and fresh eyes review the case. Over time, reward money offered by the community grows, eventually reaching $75,000. Police investigate more than 7,000 leads. The volume is staggering, but the results are not. Despite decades of effort, the case yields very little usable evidence. At the center of it all is a single unshakable fact. There is only one confirmed eyewitness, one man who saw the abduction take place. No other credible eyewitnesses ever formally come forward. Given the location, the time of day, and the level of activity in the area, that absence stands out, and it's something investigators have never been able to fully explain. Over the years, police come to believe that others may know something, that someone may have seen something and dismissed it, or that a moment felt insignificant at the time and only later took on weight. There's a persistent sense that information exists, that it surfaced briefly and then disappeared, never making its way to the investigation in a usable form. One gap continues to loom large: the laundromat next door to the Winn-Dixie parking lot. When the first officer arrives on the scene, it's full of customers. By the time canvassing begins, it's empty. Everyone is scattered, and there's no way to identify who was there or track them down later. Whatever anyone inside may have seen or heard is lost in that narrow window of time. As time moves on, the case doesn't. Years pass without resolution. Leads continue to come in and are followed up on. No arrest is made. No suspect is publicly named. The file grows thicker, but the answers remain out of reach. In January of 2021, on the 25th anniversary of Amber's death, Arlington police make a renewed public plea for information. Several months later, in October of 2021, they reveal something significant. For the first time, investigators publicly confirm that DNA evidence exists in the case. At the time of the crime, DNA technology was limited. Now, they say, advances in forensic science may eventually do what decades of traditional investigation could not. As of January 2026, the case is considered highly active, with investigators continuing to pursue new leads and monitor developments in forensic labs across the country in the hope that answers may still emerge. The case remains unsolved, evidence exists, but answers do not, and so the investigation continues, hinging on time, memory, and the possibility that someone somewhere will finally come forward. As for Amber Alerts, well, according to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, as of December 2025, 1,292 children have been safely recovered as a direct result of the system and the communities that respond to it. Recent cases show just how that system works in real time. In January of 2025, 14-year-old Neville Holden was found safe in Inglewood, California, just an hour after an Amber Alert was activated following an alleged abduction by 59-year-old Edward Mason. In September of 2025, a 16-year-old girl was forced into a truck in Boulder, Colorado, and later that day was located safely 25 miles away in Thornton after a 6 a.m. Amber Alert. In November of 2025, 13-year-old Jessica Francisco from Ogden, Utah, was last seen around 3 a.m. in her bedroom, and by 10 a.m., she was reported missing with convicted sex offender Christopher Wiggins. Thankfully, she was found safe in Colorado and reunited with her family hours after an Amber Alert was issued. And just days before this episode's release on January 22nd, 2026, a 7-year-old girl reported missing from Zimmerman, Minnesota, was abducted by a stranger identified as 28-year-old Joseph Bragg after getting off of her school bus that Thursday afternoon. She was taken roughly 100 miles away from her home, but was later found safe, with a suspect taken into custody nearly 10 hours after an Amber Alert was issued. Also, according to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, while Amber Alerts are often resolved within hours, some children who are featured in alerts are still missing, and their families continue to search for answers. These are just some of the cases that remain open. Jesus Martinez was 4 years old when he was last seen near his home in Houston, Texas on October 20th, 2004. In the early morning hours of October 21st, Jesus' mother was found deceased, and there was no sign of Jesus. He may be in the company of his father, Avelino Martinez. A federal warrant for Avelino was issued on February 13th, 2007, and he is considered armed and dangerous. Today, Jesus is 26 years old. Bianca Piper was 13 when she was last seen walking on McIntosh Hill Road in Foley, Missouri on March 10th, 2005. She left her home to go for a walk at around 6:15 p.m. and never returned. Bianca has scars on her arms and legs, a scar on her abdomen, and pierced ears. She was last seen wearing blue jeans, a gray Adidas sweatshirt, and white sneakers. Her nickname is B. Bianca may be in need of medical attention. Today, Bianca is 34 years old. Sofia Juarez was 4 years old when she vanished from her home in Kennewick, Washington on February 4th, 2003. At approximately 8 p.m. that night, Sofia walked out of her bedroom and has not been seen or heard from since. She has a mole under her left eye, and at the time she disappeared, her top 4 front teeth were missing. Sofia has pierced ears and a birthmark on her lower back. She was last seen wearing blue overalls, a red shirt, violet socks, and white shoes. Today, Sofia is 27. Christopher Gage Daniel and Chloe Leverett were 7 and 9 years old when they were last seen at 6:30 p.m. on September 21st, 2012 at their home. Later that night, at around 9:30 p.m., the house caught fire and burned. Despite law enforcement locating the other occupants of the home, Christopher and Chloe have never been found. Today, Christopher is 20 and Chloe is 22. Zaylee Fryer was only 3 months old when she and her mother, Shauna Marie Fryer, disappeared from their home in Millersville, Tennessee on May 1st, 2011. 6 days later, Zaylee's mother was found deceased in the Cumberland River approximately 40 miles from their home. The cause of her mother's death remains unknown. Zaylee is biracial. She is African American and Caucasian and has a brown birthmark on her right leg. Today, Zaylee would be 14 years old. It's in instances like these that tips, no matter how small, can help bring a child home. To learn more about the latest Amber Alerts and view a full list of children who are featured in alerts and remain missing, please visit www.missingkids.org/gethelpnow/Amber. That's all for today's episode. If you want to dig even deeper into Amber's case, or you want to find more resources on the missing child cases mentioned, you can visit our website at darklyspeakingpodcast.com, where you can find all the source materials and show notes. And don't forget to follow along on socials at Darkly Speaking Podcast for your dose of dark and chilling content. As always, thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you next time with a brand new episode.